Hi and welcome to the latest episode of the We Need Roads podcast. And what happens to us in the future? Do we become arseholes or something? Or do David's jokes actually improve in the future? That would definitely be a great Scott moment if we get a joke that makes us laugh from David. So David, what is your bad joke of the episode?
No, mate, no, I'm not giving you a joke today. I'm not.
No,
My
why?
work, the lovely people at Life, brought me a little film buff. A little film buff trivia game. So I'm going to pull out a card and see if you can answer this question.
What?
How many episodes of Tom and Jerry were created?
Oh, I don't know, because I don't watch that many cartoons.
Give me a random number. Random number.
I don't know,
I'll throw it out
400.
there. No, okay, no. The answer was 163.
Great. Terrible start to the show, David.
Okay, sorry.
Rubbish.
I could also ask you if you can name how many Toms. All the famous
No,
Toms.
'cause-
5 famous Toms.
No, because that involves me using my brain on the fly, which I'm not doing. Good God. Right, as always, I have to apologise to everyone else for... I was going to say apologise for that joke. I'm going to apologise for whatever the hell that monstrosity of what you was just trying there did. Your trivia section clearly didn't get off to a very good start there.
You didn't know the answer.
Well, yeah, because you asked me about cartoons, mate. Well, I don't watch many cartoons, do I? Unless it's like adult animation, like Family Guy, American Dad... You know, Simpsons maybe might have been a good one. Fucking Tom and Jerry, mate. Christ. It's not the 1950s.
Hey, Tom and Jerry won 7 Oscars.
Great. Good for them. They're animated animals. Anyway, apologise to our listeners for that. And I have to apologise to our second guest. Because, once again, we have a guest. And David's just, completely fucked the start of the show there. But we are very happy to be joined by celebrated local author Charlie Gallagher to talk about his new book, The Friend, discuss some of his favourite stories and plot twists, talk some hypothetical casting for his books, and Charlie's also going to chip in on our What We've Been Watching section, because in the last episode, David said he was going to force me to watch Black Summer, and I was going to force David to watch Feel Good. Luckily, Charlie has watched both of these shows, so he's going to chip in with us on that as well. So, first up, how's it going, Charlie?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, thanks firstly for inviting us along. It's always much appreciated. I've listened to this from the start, actually, mainly because you bullied me to listen to it from the start, but when I did, I realised that it's actually quite entertaining. With the exception of, I think I missed David's joke this morning. I'd have preferred that.
See, I told Neil, you complain about it all the time, but people love it. People love the jokes.
I wouldn't say love. I didn't say love,
okay.
David.
I think it's the format. Like the show has an
there.
established, the show has an established format, mate, and you just tried messing with it on the fly this morning, and it failed miserably. I think that's why he's saying
I'll bring it back for next week.
I'm also a little disappointed you didn't come to me with the how many episodes Tom and Jerry question, because I definitely knew the answer.
Did you?
No, definitely not. But we'll never know now, will we? I mean, I could have been sat there chomping at the bit with around 165, I'd have guessed.
And that would have been much closer than me, mate.
A lot closer, yeah. Lesson learned. We'll continue.
Yeah, lesson learned, David. If you ask a question, ask the guest the question as well. Maybe just a. You can tell we haven't had many guests so far, but
or just do a bad joke,
or just a bad joke, exactly. Okay, so let's go straight on to our What We've Been Watching section.
What to watch?
So first up, I have watched the first 5 or 6 episodes of Black Summer, and I'll admit it, David, you were right. Because after some heavy reservations and my complete lack of caring about zombie shows after The Walking Dead, I've quite enjoyed this show in some
I knew
places.
you'd like it. You were so adamant you were not going to watch it. The first time I recommended it to you, like 4 episodes ago.
Because you said it's...
No, I'm not going to watch that. Yeah. You were like a certain Hammond in your
You take that back. Right, that's it. I think I'm going to have to look for a new co-host.
Warning, people. Spoilers ahead.
No, I think it was just the fact you said, it's from the people who did Z Nation. And already that annoys me because it's called Z Nation and not Z Nation. And it was just pants. That was a really pants show. But, trying to sell it off a really bad show wasn't the best idea for it in the start. But, I'm about 4, 5, 6, I think actually 6 episodes in. The timings of these episodes are all over the place as well. Like one of them's like 47 minutes and the other one was 25 I just watched. But let's start. So episode 1, essentially you got lots of people running around trying to escape with, every cliche in the book. Having said that, what the show does well, it has a chapter structure to each episode and it cross-cuts the scenes. So you have that constant sense of dread, and also, being a zombie show, you're not really establishing who the main characters are very early on, and that works great because you're like, are they a main character? Nope, they've just been eaten. Are they a main character? Nope, they've just flown through a car windscreen. So it's very good at the start because you're not sure who's going to be zombie food and who's going to be one of your main characters as the show goes on. I will say, I do like the fact that you say that anyone can be killed off straight away, but it did feel a little bit less urgent and a less well-done version of the intro to Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, because they didn't, in that, it's the same kind of suburbia, people running through the gardens and that, except for they had a ton of zombie hordes there, like helicopters and car crashes and things exploding, and in this there's one or two zombies running around.
Yeah, and the intensity of it was quite slow to begin with, but then it ramps it up really quickly.
But, I think the cross-cutting the stories helps really well, and I do like the whole thing where it's like a different chapter. That's worked quite well for me in the first one.
Charlie, you've seen the show, right?
Yes, I've certainly seen the first one.
Yeah, and you what do you reckon of the first?
I have to say I really liked it, and you're talking there about there not being zombie hordes and not being too many appearing. I actually quite like that, and I wonder if that might have been intentional. Sometimes with tension and stories, I think less is more, and you never know where. Firstly, you don't know where they are. They're not sort of obvious and running down the street, which I liked. So they can kind of come from anywhere. I thought it was tense right from the off, and it also had a bit of a 1917 sort of style. The film 1917, where they did it all in one take.
Yeah.
The beginning sort of had that kind of feeling for me, where they were just following one family to start with. And there was stuff going on around and you weren't quite seeing exactly what was going on, just snippets, and really well done for me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. See, it was interesting having your perspective from someone that writes narratives, tries to write tension, and you can see how it was done from that perspective, like in the writing. How they were trying
I always
to achieve.
think, tension is obviously what they're after, and like I say about less is more, and that's absolutely the case. Sometimes what you can't see is by far the scariest element of a story, no matter in what format it appears. And I wonder if that's what they've tried to do. It might also be a budget thing. Totally accept that.
Yeah,
but
that's exactly what I was thinking, actually.
Yeah, but that's not. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think we all know there's a threat there. We can tell from it's very well acted, so we can certainly see there's something major going on. We know it's zombie related. And you're kind of waiting to see them, because clearly that's the linchpin, isn't it, of a zombie series or movie. And I think they kind of delay that, and that's actually quite effective as a storytelling technique, I would say.
Yeah, and I think 100%. It's what you told me as well, David. That they play around with the timing quite a lot in the show. So you'll be watching, you'll be cutting between these different scenes, and your first thought is, oh wait, well this scene is going to be This is happening at the same time, but it might not be. And the first episode's very clever in that you'll see a bit in the scene. You'll see someone get hit by a car early on as like a side point of a scene, and then later on you'll be with those characters and see that bit happen. And I don't know if they do this in a lot more of the episodes, but it was very elegantly plotted in that first episode where everything was tied up, so you almost kind of come back to the beginning. And, there was a few cliches, like obviously, the soldier who isn't the soldier and all that kind of stuff. The character of Spears. But, I think, I still don't know if it beats the first episode of The Walking Dead. But then, as we know, The Walking Dead just turned into a parody of itself pretty much, and it's literally still going. Whereas, again, was it 8 episodes for the first series of this? 6 episodes for the first season of The Walking Dead. So, I think at the minute, obviously Walking Dead's got it, but then again, that's purely because season 1 of The Walking Dead was done by Frank Darabont of the Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile.
Right, yeah.
And of course, the reason he left the show was he fell out with AMC over the budget. It is crazy that AMC's biggest hit since Breaking Bad and Mad Men, and they decided to halve the budget for the next series. And that's why you got pretty much the whole series taking place at the farm.
And then the budget probably,
kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
Right,
no, it didn't. No.
What, from the first season?
No, the budget reduced from the first season, and that's why Darabont walked away.
Yeah, but after the second season, into the third and the fourth, and then obviously it got the biggest TV show nearly ever.
No, because exactly, and because of the success of season 2, where they stayed in one location, it's like, right, great, next season they're going to stay at the prison. Right, next season they're going to stay at this town, and they'd have the occasional episode here or there where there'd be a massive set piece and hundreds of zombies and really cool kills. But if you look at the history of the show, they had different showrunners constantly until about the 7th or 8th season, and it was only around there again that it kind of picked up. I think, what are we up to now? Season 10 or 11? I think it's probably the last 2 or 3
To be honest,
seasons.
I stopped after Negan knocked people on the head.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did the same. Charlie, was you ever a fan of The Walking Dead?
It sounds like I might have done the same as you guys. I watched the opening series, I think the whole of it, and thought it was incredible, and then it very quickly wasn't, and I sort of stopped. I think that sounds like it might be what a lot of people have done.
Yeah.
Was the opening scene? Was that the one with the tank?
Yeah. He ends up in the tank at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, that was incredible. Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, I wonder if downhill from there was the only way they could go. I mean, they could have done lots of other different things, and you've talked out about how it probably wasn't as good as it could have been. But it did have an amazing start.
Well, the funny thing with that is Frank Darabont actually told everyone what his original plan for the first episode of the second series was, and he wanted to do this. He wanted to show the big zombie action scene with the city falling, of Atlanta falling, and you was going to follow that soldier in a tank story. Apparently, that was what he had planned.
Oh, wow. And
then it was that episode was going to end with him, like I think if I remember rightly, the soldiers like commit suicide in the tank. And the episode was going to end with Rick coming back into the tank again and taking you right back to where the end of the first episode done. And that's like a really typical thing that a lot of showrunners do, where you'll end a series on a massive cliffhanger and then completely ignore it and do a side story, but it's going to tie back into it.
Yeah. Well, that would be very Black Summer in doing that,
Yeah.
in showing how the bloke in the tank got there. That's very much what they do. That's very much their thing.
I mean, they were probably fans of Frank Darabont and the first series of Walking Dead, and then was like, wait, why didn't they? And AMC was just like, no, we can't afford to do a big zombie army versus tanks in a city thing, which, again, it would have been awesome on TV, because I still don't think you've seen anything on that scale. Probably the one thing that came close to that scale was World War Z, but I'm not going to get onto that because I hate it with a fiery passion.
That's when we get into book adaptations, that could be one that you can mention that you absolutely hate.
Yeah.
So
That's been
in relation to Black Summer, then, if you've watched it all, you'll be able to answer. In the opening episode, they go to this a house and they kick the door in, and there's a family being held at gunpoint, and then they all back away, and then that door gets shut, and you never see anything more. Does it come back to that? Because I really liked that at the time. I thought that's amazing. That's obviously a whole other story going on. It shows that there's a million stories going on at the same time, but they're keeping with what they've chosen, and those questions in your mind, again, from a storytelling point of view, I thought that was brilliant. But do they go back to that?
David?
How do you go back to that family specifically, or go back to that sort of way of showing?
That
no,
family.
no. In the second season, I don't think so. No.
Oh, that's
to
amazing.
be honest,
But,
I can't
so
remember
I like
that scene of family, but they go back to that sort of way of telling the story. They'll give you characters, and that they'll go off and do their own thing, or they'll be in a situation, they'll do something, or other characters will turn up, they'll leave. Sometimes you'll find out what will happen to them, and then other times you'll be like, it's just left open. You don't know.
And that's good. And that's good in its own way, because again, you think, oh, am I ever going to see that character again? Yes or no? In fact, you've literally just summed up one of my big. Well, as I said, I thought the first episode was really good. Second one was really good again, because again, you were cutting between the two groups of characters. And then we got to the third episode, and I really didn't like it, because this is when one of the groups of survivors literally just get outsmarted by a bunch of feral kids. And also, they make every stupid decision you can in the book. And one thing that really annoyed me in this episode was you've got a deaf character, right? Right. Now, surely the whole point of having a deaf character in a show is to place them in danger that they can't see or hear, that they can't hear, so that we can go, oh, look, there's a zombie coming right behind you and you can't hear him because you're deaf. And they never did that with this character. It was a complete waste of a great deaf character.
Similar to like A Quiet Place.
Yeah, exactly. A Quiet Place did that perfectly. And also, one thing that bugs me as well that I thought of, right, he was communicating in sign language and no one can understand him. So I get that from the filmmaker's point of view, they're doing that so that we get his frustration and the character's frustration that they can't understand each other. But wouldn't it have been better if we actually had subtitles so we could empathise more with that character, so we can get more in his frustration, so that when he does get killed, it's more of a shock?
I think it depends on whose viewpoint you're in. So who are the directors wanting us to see the perspective through? At that point, whose story are we following? So if we're following someone's story and they come across this person and you don't know what they're trying to say to you, then we don't want to know what they're saying, because we want to be seen, we want to be inside the other person's head, viewing the story from their perspective.
Yeah, well, you have
Unless
that same
the perspective
issue with...
switches and then we follow the other bloke, and then it makes sense. But I think to show...
Well, you do a little bit, but not enough to make it... The problem was that character wasn't in it enough to, one, justify killing him off that early, and two... just completely wasting what made him an interesting character.
We should definitely throw a spoilers thing in somewhere for this. Just in case, yeah.
There will be spoilers in today's show. I mean, yeah, because what we were just talking about with a character sort of disappearing, and there was a character who looks like a less fat Seth Rogen in the school scene, and there's some trap, and someone explodes, and he's behind a door, and that's it. You never see him again.
A less
Until
fat Seth Rogen.
Yeah, well, that's what the guy looked like.
No,
He had
I
the beard
know
and the
what
hair.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but that's the one thing is the characters' names don't really stick in my head much for them. I mean, the character types do, but I was like, that's less fat Seth Rogen. And but then episode 4 was brilliant. That was one of my favourite episodes of the whole series so far, and it's all about less fat Seth Rogen, and it's just him surviving. And what I love is he's got no real skills. He's slightly a bit overweight. He's a coward, and every time he tries to hide, it almost never pays off. I mean, there's a great bit in this episode where he sees an axe on the wall, and we're like, okay, well, in less fat Seth Rogen's hands, this isn't going to work. And of course it doesn't. So he tries to attack a zombie with the axe and ends up ramming it into the wall and having to run for his life again. I just loved it. And also, there was next to no dialogue in the whole episode, bar the last 2 words of the show. The last 2 words in the episode, which is the title of that chapter. I thought it was brilliant. I just love the fact that you got to saw an average schlubby guy stuck in this apocalypse, and he's scared shitless at points. Like there's a bit where I'm like, why are you running? And he just hides under a table, and then you see him stealing himself to get more and more. Okay, shit, I got to get out of here. So yeah, I mean, episode 4 was my favourite so far. Episode 5 again, I don't get what happened, and there was just a lot of people running around in the dark screaming. So for me, it's definitely hit and miss at the minute, but the hits are more than the misses so far. But you're on season 2.
Yeah,
I've got about
I think
another.
season 2 is more of a hit. I think there's more hits than misses. With
Yeah, I mean, that's
for
just,
sure.
like I said, since it dropped on Netflix, a lot more people have been saying, oh, Black Summer's really good, and it was number 1 for a couple of days. One question, and this is from episode 1 as well, and I think we mentioned this the other day when we was talking, Charlie, is that what happens, why do these people become zombies? Because in traditional zombie lore, you become a zombie if you get bitten or scratched or infected by one. But in this show, it seems to appear that anyone who dies for any reason comes back as a zombie.
Yeah.
And obviously, why are they fast? Do we find out later on, or is this just another show?
I don't know. I don't know if they go into the lore of it much. Maybe they're just going off not World War Z, Z Nation, for it.
All right.
And because I don't know, I don't think they touch upon it.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's good. I suppose.
Does that matter in this genre? Does it matter the fact that they're zombies and how they become zombies and the backstory? Sometimes, does it matter?
No, I mean, if you go back, we were on a zombie episode. We even 1968, Romero's original Night of the Living Dead. They're watching TV, and it's funny people forget this, that when they're watching TV in it, they're obviously, I think was it cosmic radiation from Venus is given as the reason for it in Night of the Living Dead. But they go through a bunch of different reasons for what could cause it really quickly, and I'm trying to think what else. The Dead Don't Die did that recently, and so it's kind of, I don't think, like you say, I don't think it matters. But
I think that the way that Black Summer runs is very much, from what I've seen, it's a quite fast moving, just everyone just try and stay alive. And I think if you start chucking in stories around how it happened in the first place, you might lose that pace and that tension. And I think they're trying to sort of keep it. It almost doesn't matter, does it? It's just stay alive type thing.
Yeah.
100% agree with that. Yeah.
Do you guys see? Can you guys think of any other zombie apocalypse that you would not want to be a part of as much as this one?
Well, 28 Days Later.
Well, you think 28 Days Later is a better one than this one, where literally everyone's out to fuck you over?
Yeah, to nick your car and leave you for dead. It's shocking how the way the humans behave. But I think, if the recent events have shown us, there wouldn't be any toilet roll for a start, and it's probably quite a good reflection on how we would be. Don't you think?
I hope not. I hope people wouldn't just just completely start murdering everyone and everyone just to get a scrap of food or a bog roll that's left on the shelf.
David, did you not see the videos, all those dickheads breaking into Wembley during the cup final the other week?
I did, yeah. People are the worst.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And isn't that always the underlying theme for these zombies films is that actually, the zombies are terrible and they'll they'll kill you, but so will the rest of us, so will the survivors, and they're just as horrible.
Yeah, and that's kind of the main kind of tenet of these post-apocalyptic zombie stories, isn't it? It's always exactly like you said, zombies are bad, but people are going to generally be worse in that situation.
Yeah. If you want to
and if you are a nice person...
Sorry, if you want to compare it to The Walking Dead again, I think that's where The Walking Dead started, when they brought in the human element of being the real fear factor and not the not the undead. That's where it went downhill for me. A lot,
very true.
With because they haven't done it anywhere near as well as Black Summer are doing it right now.
Well, the problem with The Walking Dead was it got dictated by budget, and what happened was, this is what every season was from after the first season. Survivors go to one location, meet some more survivors, get hole up in a location. Someone does something stupid, the zombies are let in, half of them are killed, they move on to the next location, meet some more survivors. Some of them are
so forth,
killed, and it just kept coming. And what happened was, the new characters were nowhere near as good as the original characters, and you didn't care about the new characters because they were just stupid. They made stupid decisions all the time. That's what I've kind of liked. I mean, you get a little bit of that at Black Summer, but so far from what I've seen, you do get characters who are genuinely pretty smart in places. So, like less fat Seth Rogen, who's now my favourite character.
Was that a yes, David? So how they turn, they just have to die effectively, and then they become zombies.
Yeah, because there's scenes, like, without spoiling anything, there's scenes later on where characters are either tied down and they've been injured in whatever reason, and they've tied down because just in case, there's a lot of precautionary measures that are in place because for similar just because they've injured themselves in something totally non-zombie related.
I saw someone, there was a character who was killed in a car crash, and then like seconds later they're running around screaming. So I was like, oh, okay, so they weren't bitten or attacked in any way. So
yeah, it's almost airborne. It's in like.
Don't start suggesting that, because that'll be on the front pages of the paper, David. No. It'll be on the front page of the Daily Mail.
I will definitely have to watch the rest of this. I was really impressed with the opening, and it sounds like it just gets better. So I'm definitely up for the rest of that. And
also, only 16 episodes in total across 2 seasons. So okay. I reckon I'll have that done by the end of next week, hopefully.
It's quite bingeable. Yeah, it's good.
So, David,
yes.
Onto your show. I got you to watch Mae Martin's Feel Good. And did it make you feel good?
It did. It hasn't yet. It hasn't made me feel good yet. No. That's what I was going to say at the end. It hasn't made me feel good at the end. If anything, it's made me feel really worried. I'm thinking she's going to revert back to drugs, Neil. She's going to go back to her cocaine ways, and I'm worried.
Well, her. If you want to set up what the show is for people, then please.
It is about a struggling comedian and a teacher, and they start a lesbian relationship with each other, and the teacher struggles with the fact that she is a lesbian with her friends, and the comedian struggles with the fact that she's struggling to tell anyone that she's a lesbian and to actually come out and like express herself, and she's also struggling with previous drug addiction.
Yeah, but that comedian
that's a pretty good summary, right?
I mean, it'll do, yeah. The comedian Mae Martin, the comedian is Mae Martin, a Canadian comedian who, and a lot of pretty much the whole thing, from what I gather, is semi-autobiographical. So what we're getting is she's essentially playing a heightened version of herself on screen and essentially telling her life story.
Yes, yeah. I was shocked to find out when I had a quick Google of Mae Martin, because I'd never heard of her before, and she's 34.
Right.
She's 34. I thought she was like 24. She's looking good. I need some of that moisturiser. Whatever she's using, because she's anyway. Yeah. Anyway, I'm about like I said, I'm 3 episodes in, and I'll probably binge the rest of it over this weekend, or if not, the next couple of 3 or 4 days, because it's really good. I'm enjoying it a lot. It's made me full on laugh out loud at moments. I think the hero of the story definitely so far is Phil. I love Phil. Phil, the roommate of the teacher.
George.
Yeah. And
played by Charlotte Ritchie.
Yeah. Thank you. And I can totally see why our mutual friend Jack, who was told us that he was watching the show with his son, who's 20 something, found it very, very awkward to watch. If you're of a certain age and your children of a certain age, I would not recommend watching this film with your kids. This show, with your kids. It might get a bit awkward at times. Don't know.
Yeah, so I take it you've watched this show as well, Charlie. So what have you thought about it?
Yes, I have. I think I'm 4 or 5 episodes into the first season, and it's. I'm a little bit ashamed to say I thought it was okay. There are bits of it that have made me laugh out loud as well, but generally it feels like a lot of the episodes are a bit samey. It's the same story. It's basically the relationship that you mentioned there, and May doing her very best to mess it up by the end, and then mess it up sort of towards the start and then repair it by the end. May's quite whiny, and her girlfriend isn't a very nice person. So I think you're supposed to want these two people to stay together, and I almost don't. I almost want them to go their separate ways. I don't think they're very good for each other, which is probably not what you wanted me to say. And I think what you've done, when you recommended Ted Lasso prior to this one as a feel-good thing, and that's blown everything else out of the water for me. And I think the next thing to come to compare itself as a feel-good comedy was always going to struggle. And this one, for me, isn't anywhere near as strong as that. So maybe that's why I just thought it's okay. I think Lisa Kudrow steals the series for me, by the way. I think she's amazing.
Oh, I haven't seen her yet. She's in the next episode. She comes into episode 4 more. Like, she's only been on the laptop.
I think it's the Brighton episode you've got coming up next, mate, which is brilliant.
It?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's superb. That one specifically.
I think that was the highlight. I think you've hit a thing on the head there, actually, Charlie. With George is not very likable. She's so self-involved in the relationship that she just drops everything else. And again, it's that standard trait in these type of shows where you've got the straight person who's not sure if she is actually gay, and it's just like a phase, or it's just that relationship. And then that's one of May's big fears, is that if they did split up, would she just go back to dating blokes again? And this is just like an experiment for her as opposed to something real. But as on the other side of that coin, you've got May just absolutely sabotaging herself, her relationship, every relationship she has with everyone the whole way through the show. And like you say, that doesn't obviously make her... But I think where you said they're not very good for each other, that does get explored in the second series. So I think when you move on to the second series, I think you hit it on the head there, that you're thinking, well, yeah, she's whiny. And that whole thing where they're not... You're like, yeah, these... Although they are... I don't know, though, because I can see that side of it, like you said, but I also think when they are together, it's the relationship does feel so real, and it's real because of all the shit that comes with it, you know. So many times you see a relationship on TV and it goes through those standards. Oh, they meet and everything's great, then there's an argument and then it's not, and then they split up and they get back together again. And that's the general structure of pretty much any TV relationship.
Yeah, you're right. Their relationship is really strong when they're alone, when it's just those two, and it's actually lovely at times. You know,
exactly.
People clearly very much in love, and then there's a house party scene when they go to a posh house party, which
that's
is
the one I just
George's
watched.
friends. Yeah, and she's just horrible. You know, I almost thought I'm not sure I want to watch any more of this because, you know, George was obviously very, very horrible to May, and May kind of wasn't happy about it, but kind of accepted it and wanted then for them to carry on. And I thought, in real life, I think you'd just be like, yeah, you're clearly a horrible person, and let's all move on. But May, obviously, it's under the guise of a comedy show, so you know you have to go to extremes at times. I do appreciate that. Overall, it's been good. It's just, all I'm saying, I think, is that it's not Ted Lasso. And I think nothing ever will be. I might have been ruined by watching that show.
Well, I mean...
Calling this show Feel Good is a bit of a... If you're going thinking it's a feel good show, it's not really.
I agree.
Well, that's the thing.
Comparison.
I mean, if you try and break it down, it's a romantic comedy drama. And what I think... it just kind of escalates, doesn't it? Each episode, there'll be a lie or a situation, and it'll keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger till at the end there is no point of no return from whatever happens in that one, and it keeps, and you can just see things fraying from the get go in their relationship, and like you say, it's all for those reasons that, you know, like you say, George doesn't want to come out to her friends, May has got problems in her past to do with her drug use that she's been hiding and potentially leading back to that into that again. What I will say is when you guys get onto series 2 without any spoilers, it really does get to the root of why is May like that. What was it in her past that caused her to be like this? And that really gets explored really heavily in dramatic effects in quite a few episodes. And the same thing with George, where she's kind of a bit flaky and all over the place. They kind of give her a bit more of a purpose. So, I mean, you kind of see what they're like apart and how they kind of realise what they need to do to actually be better people. And I think you need to. I think what you've seen in the series of them being arseholes to each other and everyone around them, and how the relationship can be very toxic in places, that it almost needs to go to those places so that when we get to the second series and we explore, well, okay, well, why did that go wrong? What did happen there? Season 2 then gives you the answers to it. So, and it's got a beautiful ending for the show. And when it does end, they've already said no more episodes, no more seasons. The story's done, and it's good. And it only needs to be 12 episodes over 2 seasons, which is
I
great.
like it when they do that. Yeah, I do like that. Is Lisa Kudrow in the second season? If so, I'm in.
Yeah, and a lot more as well. Yeah.
Okay.
I will
Convinced.
little tiny spoiler. They actually go to Canada. In the show they've gone to Canada. I don't know if they just went to somewhere around London, but with some trees and woods. But yeah, in the show they do go to Canada in season 2, which is really funny. So yeah, no, but I think at the minute this is it's going to be on my top 10 shows of the year because I just binged the whole thing. I loved it. So I think you're a little bit more muted on it, Charlie, at the minute. David, you're liking it so far. You need to keep going, and I finished it all and I thought it was great. So yeah, right, okay. So I think that wraps up our little chat on Feel Good. And so now we're going to move on to our main feature of the day, which is, well, you, Charlie.
Oh, God, is it? No pressure.
Main feature.
So, we're here to talk about your latest book, The Friend, which, if my research is right, is your 15th book. Is that right?
Yes, I think it is, yeah. I'm losing count.
Brilliant.
15. Yeah.
Excellent. So you've had 2 previous series, which were the Maddie Ives one and the George Elm series, and The Friend is a first book with your new main detective character, D.I. Joel Norris. Now, I've read the book, and David hasn't yet, because he's stuck on the 4th or 5th book of Robert Jordan's...
No. That's not the reason why I haven't read the book. I'm going to read the book, right? But I gave the book to my girlfriend first, because she loves crime novels, and
nice save, dude.
She finished it and loved it. And now she's given it to her mum, who's currently reading it. So I've not been given a chance to read it because everyone else has enjoyed it so much.
The fact that you've bought it is enough for me, David. I don't care if you read it or not. That's fine.
Although I think you should have told her mum to buy her own copy. Let's be honest.
Yeah, there is a little blot on the copybook there, but I'm always delighted that if people share them around. That's fantastic. It gets the word out, and yeah, thanks very much for that. It's a lovely thing to hear that the missus liked it, and hopefully the mother-in-law will as well.
Okay, so obviously it says in your bio, Charlie, that you were a serving police officer for, I think it was about 12 years, wasn't it? So how did you first get started as a writer? I take it you obviously started writing while you were still on the force, right?
Actually, before I was 18, 19, when I very first started writing stories, to be fair, it's something I've always done. I think writers in general, it's not something you can you fall into. You have to have a passion for it, which I clearly have. But I didn't get published till a lot later. I was in the police at the time. It was 13 years I was in police force overall, and I got very lucky. Basically, I had ideas for stories. Joining the police, there was actually a theory that it would give me more material by doing that. I didn't mention that.
Wow.
I didn't mention that in the interview. I didn't think it was the right time. But I went in the police specifically to see if I could get more material, and then ended up having a very enjoyable career. So it wasn't just for that, but yeah, I wrote a couple. I think the first 2, maybe 3, and I self-published them. I did try to get traditionally published at the time, but it's a world full of rejection. So I think I had 40 odd, still on a spreadsheet somewhere here, and I gave up the traditional route and then self-published. And as part of self-publishing, I used a professional editor, as you should always do. And then a publishing house called Joffy Books, who are one of the biggest in the country, were looking for new editors, and the editor I was using used my work as a demonstration of what she can do. And from that, they offered me directly a contract to write a couple of books with them. And the rest is history, really. I stayed with Joffy for 14 books, and the latest one now is with HarperCollins, who are, right up there, one of the biggest in the world. So it's been quite a journey, and I gave up the police 18 months ago to write full time. So the short answer to how I got into it was I fluked it, really.
So that's funny. That's so bizarre that you was a writer before you got into the police, and yet using the police has to basically gather material for what you wanted to write about. So when you were writing your original stories before you started in the police, when you were 18, 19, were they crime-based ones there, or was it that genre you were interested in, which obviously then led you to the police?
They were actually crime based, but I used to read a lot of different types. It wasn't necessarily that I was into crime, and I thought I'd get story ideas by joining the police, and I did. But actually, it was more useful for characters, for seeing people sort of at the very furthest in their, most scared, at their most excited, at their most angry. Those extremes of emotions is what I saw as a police officer, and what I then went on to be able to sort of recreate in books. And I think characters are clearly the linchpin of any story. And actually that was the biggest thing to come from being a police officer to me, was seeing characters.
Brilliant. So who was your favourite author when you were growing up then? Did you have a favourite author?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about as a kid, it was Roald Dahl. I think that's a pretty standard answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a standard because the man's, he's a bit of a genius, isn't he? I mean, his stories still... I read them too. I've got 2 kids now, 7 and 9, and as they've been growing up, I've read them all again with them, and they loved them, and I loved them all over again. And I think they're still relevant. I think they still hold up. From Roald Dahl, when I was a little bit older, I used to really like Michael Crichton. I went through a real stage of him. Jurassic Park, of course, was one of his that later become a very, very good movie. In fact, it might be one of the very few movies where I'd say that the film did it better, and that's quite a big thing for me to say.
Yeah,
clearly, I'm a fan of the...
Very few of them.
Very few, and I'm a big fan of the written word for obvious reasons. Just really for the tremor in water scene with the dinosaur footprints. I think that was incredible. And I remember being in the cinema and watching that film, and there are very few films, for me at least, where I remember where I was, what cinema I was in, who I was with, when a scene or in a particular movie goes on, and that's one for me. So I think that might actually be better in the book. But yeah, so Michael Crichton, that was quite a period. I did the standard sort of ones as well around that sort of time, but I used to read quite a lot of different things.
Well, this is a problem we have with David at the minute. He's just stuck on fantasy books.
No, there's just... Oh, okay. There's just so many of them, though. And they're all so big.
Can we talk about your problem, David? Is it okay to bring out your little problem that you have on the podcast? Your addiction.
Oh, what to charity bookshops? Is that what?
Yeah.
Is that what you're on about?
Yeah,
here?
that's what I was getting to. Yeah. How much did you spend on second-hand books the other day?
£24 on £2
how many
books.
books
£2 books. So 12 books.
Right. Now, how long does it take you to read a book on average? Say a 400 or 500 page book.
I don't know. Maybe about 4 months.
You see my problem right there.
Yeah, because I'll be like, I'll read in the mornings or I'll read over night time, but I won't read much. I'll read for maybe half an hour, and I'm quite a slow reader.
And do you keep up with the story okay by doing that?
Yeah. I keep up.
You don't forget stuff.
Some of the fantasy stuff, it gets really confusing because I'm flipping back and forth between different. Like they'll mention something that happened in one book, and then 2 books, and then and then it will come up again 2 books later, and you're like, I have to flip back between books. That's where it gets confusing. But if I'm just reading one book, then I'm fine. But it's when they mention stuff that happened in previous books. That's where it's...
See, I'm a multi-book reader. I'll probably have 3 or 4 books on the go at any one time.
No, I can't do that. I'd lose where I'm at all the time.
Yeah, but I think that's just the problem with your attention span. So
yeah, it's not great.
I think the problem, mate, as well, mate. You're currently reading Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and there are 15 books in that series. I mean, it took so long to finish that series. He died before he finished it. He basically, did a George R.R. Martin.
Well, George Martin's still alive.
I have to say, I've got so much respect for these fantasy writers. Obviously, being a writer myself, and I write police procedurals, police thrillers, whatever you call them, which is something that I lived for 13 years, and that's difficult enough. These men and women write stuff that is whole new worlds, languages, species of people. It's just incredible what, they start including magical powers and stuff like that. I can't even imagine the ambition to start something like that. And they're 800-900 pages. It's incredible. I've got so much respect for them.
Yeah, I think some of the best fantasy authors, the best ones, they know that writing that story is going to be a good chunk of their life. It's going to be 10, 15 years for the best kind of series to come out. I mean, what's the other one in the minute, David? Patrick Rothfuss, In the Name of the Wind?
The Name of the
supposed
Wind.
supposed to be a trilogy.
King Killer Chronicle.
Kingpin, yeah, supposed to be a trilogy. He's written the first two in however many years, and then it's
They were
been
both like
again
back to back almost 2 years between each other, 3 years between each other, not long. And then his last one's taken over 10 years.
Yeah, so he's George R.R. Martin in it. But
Well, George Martin, his Song of Ice and Fire was only meant to be 3 books. It was he originally planned that as 3 books, and it's turned into he's on 5 at the moment, and then it's going to be 7 if he ever gets around to finishing the next one.
well, we can but hope. But right, so moving back to our guest there, David.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, at the minute, obviously, who would you say your favourite author is at the minute then? Because obviously you mentioned Crichton and Roald Dahl when you were growing up. And do you stick to reading books around a similar genre and crime, so you read your peers, as it were? Or do you think, right, that's the day job, working on crime books, I want to read something completely different for pleasure?
Yeah, for pleasure, certainly. I mean, I do read a lot of crime books, but mainly because I read something that's successful. If it's been number 1 in the charts for a while, or if it's a big launch by a well-known and established crime writer like Stuart McBride, anything he releases I'll read, because I admire him greatly as a descriptive writer. I don't think there's anyone better, but overall he's superb. So I will read popular crime books just to see why they're popular, really, or to try and work it out, if that makes sense. And see if I can steal any ideas. Of course, that's always key. But in relation to pleasure, I mean, more so when I was in the police. Obviously, you know, I do a 10-12 hour shift and then come home and then potentially write about it or make notes. The last thing I wanted to do then was to read a crime novel. So I would go on to something else, and I read John Niven. I don't know if you're someone you know. He's written The Second Coming. I think he wrote How to Kill Your Friends as well, so he's like a comedy spoof type genre, which is something totally different.
That's not a self-help book then?
No, not at all. I'm reading The Second Coming now, which is about God being on holiday, which for God it was a week, but for in real time it was about 2,000 years. So he's come back to be briefed about what's happened in the last 2,000 years, and of course he's furious, which is well worth a read. I'm reading a Harlan Coben at the moment, a Stephen King, and also Unnatural Causes, which is a book by it's a true life book by a bloke called Richard Shepherd, who was a top pathologist in the UK. He was actually the one who was sent out to the Hungerford massacre, which he describes, and it's just incredible. The whole thing about it is incredible. But also learning what a pathologist is and what they do, and how they work with the police and how they're significant in solving the crimes is useful, not just an entertainment point of view and amazing to hear, but useful from the crime writing point of view. So, yeah, I read a lot across genres, much as I can, really.
Yeah, I was saying this to David. I mean, David, you seem to be kind of stuck in fantasy. Where at the minute, I always kind of, whenever I kind of, every couple of months, I'll do a bulk buy of like 6 or 7 books, and I'll try and go completely different genres for all of it. So, you know, you'll get your sci-fi epic. I'll go for whatever the latest good horror film is. Find a biography of someone who I like, an actor or actress. Find a good music one. Actually, you were saying about crime. One of my favourite authors, actually, probably in that genre, was James Elroy, who did LA Confidential.
Yeah.
And I forget the exact name, but he did a quartet of books with those same characters. And when I found that out, I was always gutted that we got LA Confidential, but we never got the other 3 films in that series, which could have just been amazing, especially as, you know, LA Confidential was one of the best films of the year. Well, you know, I think it won all the Oscars that year it came out. It was Russell Crowe at his peak, Guy Pearce being brilliant, Kevin Spacey when we could still talk about Kevin Spacey. So it was just, and his I think he had his autobiography as well, because I think, if I remember this rightly, his mother was murdered when he was a child, and so that obviously, you know, being a crime writer, that really set him on his path, and his autobiography is supposed to be really stunning as well. So I've got that on the list to get at some point as well.
Yeah, I remember the film, and I don't think I read any of his books, but he was technically has a massive reputation of being technically very, 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 very on the point, very, very good, which is not an easy thing to do either.
There's an author that Natasha enjoys at the moment. It's Peter James. I know he's quite famous in the crime.
Massive, yes.
Yeah. One of the reasons why she loved your book as well as his books is that it's because it was based locally, and there's loads of like local, like pubs and the hospital and stuff that comes up in the book, and she's like, oh, she was telling me about it. She's like, oh, they're in William Harvey Hospital, or like, oh, they're at this pub, and she like knows the pub and all that, and it just adds that element of like, I don't know, reality into what she was reading when she was reading that. And it's the same with Peter James because it's all set in Brighton.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Peter James is quite famous for being linked with Brighton. He's kind of got that area sewn up. That's kind of his territory now. So I don't think you could ever write a crime novel in Brighton if you're not Peter James. He does an incredible amount of research, Peter James. He does do ride-outs with the police. In fact, he's got a really good relationship with Sussex Police, I think it is there. And he's quite well known by a lot of the senior detectives, and he has some of the retired Sussex that he works with whenever he does his book. So when you read his stuff, and I have, his procedure's spot on. It really is very, very good. Which is
I think when my partner was working at the drugs lab in London, he turned up at the drugs lab a few times just to find out how they did something specifically with a certain item of clothing, just to figure out that stuff. And similar to what you've done, like your level of research and joining the police force like to learn about like how to write the procedure better by actually working it and living it, which is a bonkers amount of research that you've done, like a real dedication.
Yeah, that was definitely a big part of it. Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't the only reason. At the time, I was working for an insurance company and bored out my mind, and watched a few episodes of Road Wars and thought, "Oh, that looks exciting." So there was other elements to it, but yeah, it was a big reason, and you can tell there's a lot of ex-coppers actually that write stories. Peter James, I know, is not ex, but you'd put him in the same category because of the amount of stuff that he must have seen, and what you're talking about there, turning up at a lab, that's incredible. I've never done that myself. So, and obviously being in the job that amount of time, it's amazing. You can tell the people that have experienced it, for real.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, the local settings are brilliant. I mean, there's nothing like seeing a grisly murder take place at a location you've been to as a teenager and got horribly drunk at. So I'm talking about the Phoenix Club, which is one of the locations in the book. So that was again, and like David said, the local settings is really brilliant because obviously you can picture it in your head. But I think because of the way it's written as well, it gives people who don't know the area, it does give you a sense of what the area is like really well as well. You get that kind of, well, most of Dover's pretty shit in places. That kind of, the opening scene where you have Danny Evans just drinking in the bar, that the washed-up ex-footballer, and kind of like, I mean, I used to work in a pub in Dover, and when you were there and working the afternoon shift in a weekday, and you'd see those one or two people just come in, and they didn't want to talk to anyone, they didn't want to listen, they would just sit there and drink constantly, and that was it. And I was like, that's that guy, right there, which you could see it straight away.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of editors now, and they're all very, very talented people. And the advice will always be, put it somewhere, make the story happen somewhere. I know it sounds obvious, but you have to ground a story in a place, and then once you've done that, you can then make that part of the story, if that makes sense. And people really appreciate that. And even it's lovely. I get contact from people in Australia and America that have read the books and have lovely things to say, and it blows my mind that it goes that far. But they also enjoy the descriptions of England. It builds their opinions, their mind's eye of what England's like, even the rougher bits like you mentioned. And Dover's not all
no.
So
we've got the St James area now.
Yeah, absolutely. But you do have to give a story a place, and you'll find, again, I know this is a TV and a movie podcast, so I appreciate this 20 minutes of talking about books, but you'll find that in television as well, that the place is probably, you might even notice it more now, but it's very, very a strong part of the story, and it's chosen very carefully.
Yeah, it can be a character itself, can't it? A place and location can be in itself a character. Like Shining, for example.
The Overlook.
Yes,
Overlook Hotel is a character in the book.
In fact, when I was at uni, David, one of the courses they ran, and I thought it was a bit of a wanky idea at the time, and then until I got into it a bit more, I was like, okay, no, I see what I mean. And the course was called Space and Place in a Cinematic City, and it was all about how the city the film is set in is a character within the film, and how if you set that film in a different city, the film wouldn't work at all. And the reason I thought it was wanky at the start was the book on the whole subject, like the main kind of book that hypothesised this whole theory, was written by our lecturer. And then we were having to do it. So I was like, okay, so you're just literally getting us to all buy your book. But as we went into it, it did get really interesting. And of course, we used to have these, what's the word? We used to have these seminars where everyone would like jump in and like you have to answer questions on it and all that. And I remember arguing about Ghostbusters 2 as a perfect example of it. And it's funny because you had all your typical students, give the typical student-y answers. They come out with, Jean-Luc Godard films and Scorsese. Well, obviously Scorsese stuff's going to be set in New York. It's central to it. Or any film that had the word of the city and the place in the title, which obviously that's going to be inherent to it. But I argued about Ghostbusters 2 because the whole plot of Ghostbusters 2, and I just loved it, just showing some of these people out. I just loved it because Ghostbusters 2, the whole plot is slime is rising up from beneath the sewers, and the slime is being created by all the negative feelings and just general shittiness of people in New York. And the only way they can stop it is to get the Statue of Liberty animated with slime, dancing down the street, and getting all the New Yorkers to start partying with each other and not being dicks to each other, and that's how they save the day. I mean, that film would not work in any other city. And the city itself is a central tenet to what creates the problem and what solves the main sort of problem in the film. And everyone's just kind of looking at me like I've gone mental. And I said, well, okay, well, if you want to argue that, I can argue that Anger Management, the Adam Sandler film, is a post 9/11 representation of how New York is now a safe city to come to post 9/11. And again, everyone looked at me like I was mental. But again, Adam Sandler, when he leaves New York and goes off to visit somewhere else, everything in his life goes to shit. And you've got that whole bit right near the start of the film when he gets tasered on the plane for making a joke. And again, the whole point of that scene was to show you, look, it's safe to come and fly into New York now. If you fuck around, you'll get tasered. And then, the film ends at Yankee Stadium with bloody Mayor Giuliani at the time doing the Rob Schneider "You Can Do It" line, and Adam Sandler throwing a ball at the Yankees. It was like a picture postcard of what New York is. Right. New York to me is always. Did I just go a little bit past you there, David?
No. I'm with you. I'm just, I don't know. I kind of want to bring it back. I want to bring it back to the friend.
Okay. Yeah, I may got a little bit.
We've gone too far. We've gone too far out now.
Well, yeah, okay.
I remembered
so
the question I wanted to ask earlier.
Cool, and it is.
But before we get into that, I think we need a quick summary of the friend, or a quick spoiler-free summary, Charlie, of what the friend's all about.
Oh, blimey, a spoiler-free one. Well, that's always. I mean, it's two families that have suffered a tragedy, either a loss of a loved one or a loved one that's in a coma, and they haven't had justice for what happened to their families. It's been about a year or so since the tragedies have happened. They're two separate families from each other, and then someone arrives to talk to both of the families or to members of, and to pretend or to state that they know what happened and to be able to give them answers. So of course the family members jump at the chance, and then it begins to question as to what the motivation of the friend, the person with these answers, is. And that's a terrible summary. And I used to be very good at that. I just don't really well practice.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, like you said, you got your two main sort of families. You got the Evans family.
I'm still thinking about New York.
Yeah, I did. One of the things, as you know, with the podcast is we do go off on tangents, and I've had that story in my back pocket for a long time that I wanted to mention on it.
What you need to know about me as well is that since The Friend, I've written another one, and I'm now writing a third, and I've edited the second one to death. So I've basically forgotten
the first one.
What The Friend was. I mean, yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, but like as you say, the setup in the and again, stop us here, mate. If I go into anything too spoilerific, feel free. But the setup in The Friend is we introduced to Danny Evans, this washed-up ex-footballer who's just drinking himself to death essentially in like shitty pubs around Dover. And like you say, his family is one of the ones that's been affected by a tragedy. And then we have the other character's family, Richard Maddox, who's an older guy in his 60s, and he's kind of also dealing with a loss. And like you say, this character turns up, who's called the friend, the titular character, and he says, "Yeah, we know. Yeah. I know who's responsible for that. The police aren't interested, but I can help you. I can tell you where they are. I can get you revenge." And it's how each of these characters handles that information and what they do with it. And actually, what was quite surprising to me, And it was only, I forget how many pages into the book, and then I was so gripped by the intro to Danny Evans and his family and their backstory. And, he's set up as your main character at the start. And then it's only, I forget what chapter it was a little bit into it, when you finally introduced your main police character, D.I. Joel Norris. And that's a great scene with them playing laser tag with his daughter. I thought that was really nice at the start there. And just the girl being stroppy, and I was like, that's got to be, that's got to be from your own experience of having kids, surely, a scene like that.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, the police come in quite a bit later, and that breaks with the traditional... I mean, a traditional setup for a crime thriller is a discovery of a body in the opening chapter, or a murder committed, but you're seen through a third-person point of view, so you don't know who's involved. And then from then on, the police turn up, normally second or third chapter, and then it's an investigation, and then you follow normally one police officer's point of view from that point. And I've never written one like that, and I don't. It's not an objection to that structure. It just doesn't seem to be the way that I can write. I prefer to do lots of different points of view. I think that gets you involved in the characters and with the characters a lot more. And with this one, I mean, the summary of the book, a better summary might be that it's about the manipulation of normal people to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So I'm going to get someone, this is not really a spoiler, someone in the book is going to commit a murder as a revenge with their motivation. And they would never have done it in a million years if they weren't manipulated. But they're vulnerable to manipulation, and then they are manipulated. So for that to be believable, for any one of us to be able to go out and kill someone is clearly a massive thing. You have to understand that person, their backstory, and that means I have to give them a point of view, because you have to get in their mind and understand where they are, how desperate they are, etc. So that's kind of the setup, and that happens in two different families, and then you'll question the motivation of the stranger that comes along, and then the police get introduced later on, and at that point you already know far more than they do, and then you're playing catch up alongside the police, which I thought was quite a nice structure. And the end result, I was very pleased with it. I think it worked out quite well. So yeah, I mean that's a little bit of a better summary. I think
one thing that Natasha said that she really enjoyed was that it was the whole reason behind everything, which I'm not going to mention, but the that it's not something that you read about or even see in other forms of media, like what's going on. That's not really something that's discussed. It's hard to talk about this without spoiling it.
It is, and I think clearly I know exactly what you mean, and there are, and I've written a few books with subjects that are. I'll talk about a previous one, which was of sex workers that are forced to perform in front of a camera, for example, for payment, and then the people that are forced them to do it take the payment that they receive, and it's almost like a slave trade. And from my experience, I know it goes on all the time, but again, you'll never see that referenced in the media or talked about, and it is a form of slave labour. There's no other word for it really. And again, in The Friend, I use that isn't the story behind The Friend, but The Friend has a similar sort of theme to it that reveals itself at the end. And again, it's happening all the time. The motivation and the reasons why these terrible deeds are done are absolutely true, and I think that gives it a little bit more authenticity at least.
Did you take any elements from any of your real life cases and put it into The Friend? I mean, with some of the stuff that happens, I'm going to assume is completely created by yourself, but some of it I can see being something that you worked on. Yeah,
there are. There's no. All of the criminals are obviously all made up, and the police officers they're all bits of people that I've worked with, bits of people that I know. And the criminals the same, but I mean there are some true things in there. I mean when for example I'm describing a dead body, it's likely that I've seen a dead body in that situation, so I'm describing what I've seen, if that makes sense. But so it's not that I'm using things that as part of a plot line, but I am describing things that I've seen. The actual storylines are clearly made up and sometimes exaggerated, as you're able to do in fiction with that artistic license, because you're trying to write something that is a thriller after all. So yeah, I take things that I've seen and characters that I've met over into the books, but they're all made up. It's all fiction.
Okay. So the case and the story isn't anything that you draw upon through real life. It was more elements in it and visual stuff. Yeah,
I mean, you will take snippets. So like I've worked missing missing children before, and when you go to the home address, the atmosphere, the tension, the people that are around, how they act, there is a missing child storyline in this one, and it will. So I use that exactly, and that will be something that I've experienced. But the story that obviously that's interwoven around that is entirely made up, is entirely different. So you use bits and bobs, but it's not something that I've worked. The case overall is not something that I've worked.
No, okay.
Yeah, so I think to bring it back again to the film thing, let's talk adaptations. So let's take The Friend, for example, because I've read it. Now, that's a 400-page book, and there's the old screen play adage that 1 minute of page time is equivalent to 1 minute of screen time. So by that reckoning, The Friend should be about 4 hours long. So I think that means it would lend itself best to being adapted for TV rather than a movie over 4 1-hour episodes. I mean, do you have any preference, Charlie, to how or where you'd like to see your work adapted onto the big screen? Or, again, would you be happy to have it just adapted, I suppose?
Well, yes. I mean, there's quite a common conversation when you talk about being a writer of books. People always say, oh, one day, hopefully, you want it to be on the TV or on a movie screen. And, there's the assumption that you aspire, that's like the top of where you can be as a novelist. And actually, I love the written word and I love the format and all the freedoms that it gives me. So it's not necessarily an obsession for me, but don't get me wrong, I wouldn't turn it down. And if it came to it, I think I like the TV format. I think in the last 5-6 years, maybe since Netflix has come into prominence, you've seen that actually TV series, the quality of them is exceptional, absolutely exceptional. And I think that 1 minute equals one page that you mentioned there has also gone out the window a little bit, because you think of a series like Breaking Bad, which could be a single book.
Yeah.
It's done over however many, was it 5 seasons in the end? And they spent whole episodes on chasing a fly around a lab, which might not have been the best episode, but it's an example of what you can do now in telly. You can really get to know characters. You can really take your time getting to know whole family setups, where actually only one character in that family is important to the story. But by seeing them as part of their family and understanding the rest, you understand them better, which makes a story better. So, I mean, TV series would be my choice, I think, is the short answer. Just because I like the format. I love the idea of 40 minutes of story and then a cliffhanger. Because, of course, in a movie, that's far more difficult. You'll get cliffhangers that are instantly answered, if that makes sense, in a movie, whereas the TV format allows for something for people to marinate for 7 days or whatever, which I think, as a writer, it really excites me. So I think I'd probably go TV.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be kind of a fan of the Netflix style where it's all bingeable at once, was it? I think for a crime show, you kind of want it. Oh, well, I mean, the perfect example of that is what was the biggest show of earlier in the year? It was Line of Duty. Like, the internet every Sunday night after that episode or building up to that episode was just awash with theories and speculations and what's happened in the cliffhanger. And that was because it was one episode a week. And I think the pandemic's probably changed production a little bit in that not as many shows have been made as quickly. And therefore, when all the big, Amazon and Apple and all that have got their new shows coming out, they're going to just release the one episode a week. But I also think the byproduct of that is you get much more talk from people about the show because people are watching it at the same time. This past couple of weeks, I suppose, has been Loki, which has been dropping at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, which is like the big new Disney Plus show, the new MCU show. And again, if you go on the internet at 9 o'clock in the morning, it's just awash with people talking about Loki all at the same time. And I think if it all dropped at one point, not everyone can watch everything in one go. And so people are at different points. So, oh no, don't tell me about it, I haven't seen it yet. When everyone watches something at the same time, then, that generates that water, that's what they call the water cooler moment, isn't it? Where everyone, everyone comes into the office the next day and they all talk about, oh, did you see so-and-so last night? Oh yeah, wasn't it great? Yeah. And that's what I think the traditional kind of TV is kind of almost shifting back to now with a lot of its thing.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think there's arguments for both. If you was to drop, say, a decent drama series these days, you're looking at 8 to 10 episodes, usually an hour each, for example. If you went for like an Ozark type setup. So again, you're dropping 10 hours of TV. There aren't many people that would do that in a day. So you would still have that cliffhanger element. I think, but people choose to watch it over the course of 2 or 3 days. So you do still get that with a TV series. But yeah, I mean, from a writer's point of view, the weekly thing is a really exciting setup, because you know that you're dropping a cliffhanger at the end of every episode, and then you're giving people 7 days, like I say, to marinate on that and to look forward to the next. So yeah, I think as a writer, that would be my preference. Although as a consumer, I want it all dropped so I can binge it.
So the new series of Ted Lasso is really going to piss you off then, because there's only going to be one episode a week.
We've already talked about this. Me and the wife have tactics when something comes out that we're excited about, and I think we're going to wait. I think we're going to let it build, and then because it's not the sort of thing where you can get spoilers really, because the story almost doesn't matter.
I love that you have a tactic for it.
We have to have a tactic. It's a very serious sit-down talk, that is, David. A very serious talk.
I mean, yeah, with Ted Lasso, it can only really go so many ways, can't it? It's, they get promoted, and then I mean, we discussed it all in the last episode, like, because it's such a good formulaic show that you don't, the journey you're on with it, you don't mind. I mean, we had all our predictions, like you say in the last episode, and I think it's the 26th of July it comes back. So can't wait for that. So actually, one other quick question I got is, so talking about Line of Duty, is it, as it's one of the most popular police procedurals going, is it spot on? Is it all bullshit, or is it kind of somewhere in the middle?
I didn't like it. Right, let's just get cards on the table. It's very cliche. If you're a police officer or have been or have anything to do with it, then you'll recognise a lot of the characters that are supposed to be what police officers are like, and generally, they're not. So it was quite difficult for us to watch. And again, I'll talk about the wife. She was a police officer for 10 years, so also knows it inside out. And we struggled, and it became annoying, and we gave up. That's not to say it's a bad programme, so clearly it isn't. The procedure was quite good. The way that the detectives and the investigative team worked wasn't so good, and the way they talked to each other was the biggest issue we had. But what I will say as well about police dramas is the technically right or wrong doesn't matter. And I use Luther as an example, one we have watched all of, and that's absolute bollocks in relation to how the investigation pans out, what they discover, the leaps of faith they make, the fact that a DI is actually out doing something rather than sat behind a desk, all that's rubbish. But it didn't matter because it was properly entertaining. So I think that's what I need to remember, and we all need to remember, is it's entertainment. So it's absolutely fine. The Line of Duty wasn't entertaining for us because it was every single police cliche crammed into as many, cramming as many in as they could in every episode. But the story and the rest of that, I mean, it was verging on ridiculous at times. But again, that's entertainment, so does it matter?
Exactly, yeah, hit the point right on the head there. I think, where do you draw the line between being factually right for a show within a dramatic genre, or, I mean, I suppose a producer like, you probably got like the writers consulting with police about it and then going, right, so would they do that? Well, they would. Oh, but that's a bit boring. Can we just skip that step and go straight from A to F, as it were?
Yeah, I think they definitely did consult with that. They 100% consulted with police officers and police consultants. But I feel like they've then sort of gone the other way and said, right, we need to show that we've researched this load, so we'll just use as many police phrases and as we possibly can, and we'll bring in all the cliche hard-boiled detectives and all the rest of it, and all the police officers cheating on each other and all this sort of, and it's quite a long way removed from how a police station and a major investigation runs. But that's my experience. Who's to say? I mean, it's based in the Met. I've never worked in the Met. Who's to say that's not
what the Met's like?
The way that, yeah, exactly. Who's to say? I mean, I can only speak from my experience, and we didn't get on with it, but I'm clearly wrong because everyone else loved it. So.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? All entertainment is subjective. When me and David disagree on films and shows and argue, even if we don't personally like them, there's very few shows that I would say that is badly made and shouldn't be on TV because it's just so badly done. It all comes down to personal preference a lot of the time. I mean, referring to Line of Duty, there was a brilliant... I think it almost teetered into self-parody in the last series. I mean, there was Line of Duty bingo, right? So people on Twitter would have a bingo card and you would tick it off throughout the episode if all certain phrases were uttered by the characters. And they were almost every episode. There'd be a bit where the main two coppers would call each other mate. There'd be a bit where he'd read off the same bit when they're about to start an interview. there'd be a bit where there's someone got a burner phone. You're like, right, burner phone, tick. Someone meeting under a subway somewhere, tick. You know, and a police acronym that may or may not be real. And that's funny. When the first episode of the last series aired, the word chiz or jizz was trending on Twitter.
Oh, God.
Because they had the word chiz, and half the people misunderstood it. And so it was literally trending countrywide in the UK because people didn't know what it meant and were wondering, did they just say jizz 20 times in the show?
That's kind of what I'm talking about, the cliches, but yeah, I'm glad other people have picked up on it. And again, like I said, it wouldn't have ruined it for people. In fact, it sounds like it's added an extra dimension. So, it was a great show.
Ted Hastings is just an Irish cliche machine. He's brilliant. I don't think, like you say, I don't think he'd exist in the real world ever. I mean, there's his most famous line he used to keep saying Mother of God in every episode. And Jesus, Mary and Joseph. And in one episode, just to take it that a little bit further, he said Jesus, Mary, Joseph and the wee donkey. And that's all you could see online for the next week was the wee donkey everywhere. And they were just photoshopping in donkeys to like parts of the episode and all that. But again, that fandom around the show was what made it entertaining almost as much as the show. You know, that people were so invested in it, despite the cheesiness and over the topness.
Absolutely. And what I know of myself on a far smaller scale than that, of course, is that when you've set precedents, you have fans of a story or a series, you have to play to those fans as well. So there will be people expecting the Jesus, Mary and Joseph catchphrase, if you want, to come up. And if you can't start disappointing those people, the diehards. So it's a difficult mix, especially when you're 6 or 7 series into something, you know. So it's obviously a great show, and it's probably one of them things that I'll go back to later and really enjoy with a different attitude, if you like.
Yeah, so getting back to the frame, one thing I do want to talk, which you probably haven't talked about in interviews before, is potential casting for the show. What actors would you like to see playing the roles? I mean, for the first one, for Danny Evans, when I was reading the book and thinking about it, I went for the lazy choice, and admittedly I just thought Danny Evans could easily be played by Brett Goldenstein, who plays Roy Kent in Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Because he's just got that...
Yeah, I think you...
Although he plays it for comedy effect in Ted Lasso, if you put that character in a drama, that anger he's got would just be perfect for a character like Danny.
When I asked Natasha this question, she went for Danny Dyer. As who she was imagining. She was imagining Danny Dyer. Well, I don't think I want Danny Dyer in anything, but I'm just saying that's who she was imagining.
I think Danny Dyer could do it, certainly. Yeah, I remember when you told me about Brett Goldstein when we was obviously at the workplace, and I struggle to disagree with you there. I thought that was a great shout at the time. I thought about it a little bit since, and there was a guy in Gangs of London called, I think his name's Soap Dirisu. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah,
Soapy Dirisu.
He played the undercover. Yeah, he played the undercover cop, and I thought he was superb in that. And it's not too far removed. And you will have to apologise. I'll have to apologise now for my lack of imagination. When I see a good police officer role being played, I think, they'd make a good, Joel, because I can see him playing a good police officer. So, not a massive leap for him, but I thought he was superb in Gangs of London.
No, yeah, great shout there. Actually, he'd be perfect. Actually, wouldn't he? Yeah, I can totally see that. He's obviously built the right way, and of course he was playing undercover, so he was part of the gang in that show. So, but then when he switched back to being a police officer in some of the scenes, you could see that he could be a very good on the edge type police officer character. And I'm watching again because I'm watching at the moment. I guess I'm watching C at the moment on Apple TV, and it's got Jason Momoa as the lead on that, and he would be another. I appreciate he's probably far too big now as a name to lower himself down to that sort of thing. But I think he was superb, and he would be that sort of brooding, well-built, no-nonsense type detective that I think I'm going for there. No, you can get Aquaman down to Dover, man. It's fine. Netflix is supposed to be building studios in Ashford in the coming years, so we can sort that.
Yeah. All right, we'll have a word and we'll see what we can do.
Definitely.
If Momoa's up for it, I'm up for it, is what I'm saying.
Brilliant. That's a quote for the podcast, isn't it, right there? So also, the other character I was looking at was Richard Maddox. So again, he's an older guy in his 60s. Now,
okay.
I was thinking, I had to think about this one, and I never would have thought this actor normally, but Sean Bean, I think, would be perfect for him, especially if you've just seen his new show, Time, where he actually plays someone in jail for killing someone when he's drunk, but Sean Bean in that, playing that kind of having his family took away from him, being on the inside and not wanting to give in to that thing, and also he's 62 now, so he's the right age for it.
Blimey, yeah. Again, I can't disagree with that. I'm a fan of his work, absolutely.
I kind of just then was kind of googling through actors around that age, and if you want to go a bit older and not as a bit more surprising, and not really an actor you would see in these type of films, someone like Jim Broadbent I think would be good for that, because you can imagine him as that kind of old retired guy working at a garden centre.
Yeah, that whole role would. I don't think it's absolutely key to the story. So it would have to be someone cast absolutely right. It's not an easy one to play. I mean, when you read it, it might seem like it's just an old fella who's cut up about losing his wife, but actually he has quite a journey from being cut up to being told some information, and then from there turning into this angry ex-soldier, wishing he was younger, and going on to commit atrocities. I think that's quite a journey. We've seen it actually before with characters of that age, but as to who would play it, it would have to be the right person.
Yeah, because I mean,
Wouldn't be an easy one.
I think someone like Broadbent, who's not, you would look at him and the first thing you see him, you'd be, he's that old fella who's bumbling around the house, sad, and to have someone like him then turn into that would be completely. I suppose it's a bit like the guy from Better Call Saul, isn't it? Who's just done that film Nobody, where he plays he plays like an ex-CIA assassin, and he's just like this typical middle-aged schlub to everyone else, and then he has that home invasion and he just loses his shit.
Do you not think Jim Broadbent, the impression of him is of a bumbling nice old man? But then I guess that might be a strength, because
exactly,
changing the contrast from being that bumbling nice old man could be quite nice, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you've got the other typical names. Someone like Gary Oldman is around the right age, but he always looks like a psycho anyway, so that's probably not a good idea. Or if you want to keep someone who's got the police background, Philip Glenster, Life on Mars, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, do you have any thoughts yourself on Maddox, or is it, it's kind of like you say, it's kind of a hard one to pick, really, isn't it? Because so much of him you think he's going to be one thing, and then he obviously goes on that journey. Yeah,
no, I've nothing more to suggest beyond what you've said. I mean, I was looking, when I was thinking about it as a question, because I guessed it might come up, I was thinking more about the female detective that runs alongside Joel. I didn't really think about Richard, because I guess he's not part of the characters that move on to the next and part of the series. But yeah, I mean, any of those would be a great shout.
Who have you been thinking about for Rose then?
Well, I really like Clemence Posey. I think, again, that's how you pronounce her name. She was in The Tunnel. I don't know if it's a programme you saw.
I haven't seen that, but she was in Tenet, wasn't she, briefly? She had that one scene in Tenet.
Yeah, which I can forgive her for. That's fine. Everyone has to be in a turkey at some point, don't they? But yeah, The Tunnel. She played a police detective in that, and again, that's me being lazy. But she was kind of an autistic type character. Is the best way I think I would describe her. She didn't show any emotion at all throughout it. She was very, very fierce, very determined, massively intelligent, and I really quite like that. And it's the sort of traits that I would see in Lucy Rose. So I think she would be fantastic. Alongside, I think maybe Jodie Comer, who's just someone that I think is amazing. In anything I've seen her in, she's been incredible. So when it comes to casting, I mean, I probably wouldn't have too much input anyway. And we're obviously assuming this is going to happen because clearly it is.
Oh,
at
no,
some point.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is that a lot of the shows that I watch these days, the casting's spot on. I mean, they clearly know what they're doing. So that would be something I'm quite happy to leave with someone else, for their expertise. But it's a lovely conversation, don't get me wrong.
Oh, no, I've got two more because I've been doing my work on it. So, Norris, my first couple of thoughts for D.I. Norris, and I've got a couple of left. Again, if you want to go your Hollywood route, for someone who's got the size and build of him, obviously you got Henry Cavill, because he's not done a police procedural, especially in England. So that might be a nice change after The Witcher for however many years that's going to go. Who is someone who has played a cop, but more in a zombie apocalypse? Andrew Lincoln could be a good shout. He's around the right age. If you want to go a bit younger, you got Domhnall Gleeson, who's been brilliant in everything he's been in recently.
Natasha said Richard Madden.
Yeah, okay, that's better. That's better than her last choice.
Well, the first one, she started off with a young Piers Brosnan, or a younger Pierce Brosnan, and then she.
But
went
we don't
to
have a
Richard
time
Madden.
machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Richard Madden would be a good shout, actually. He was, of course, he's obviously already done the... Yes. Yeah, he was very good in that too. I also, I should say that the audiobook version is out, and that was narrated by Alexis Rodney, who is an actor who's been in a number of things. But yeah, anyway, he narrates it, and he's superb. I mean, I obviously listened to the narration, and he understands the story, of course, having narrated it, but he also... The way that he portrayed the characters, voice acting is not easy at all. I've got a lot of respect for him, and he did seem to really get it. So he would certainly be someone that I would be putting forward.
And then obviously the last character, and I only had really two choices for this one. With The Friend, you get such a... I'll tell you what, the character of The Friend immediately made me think of Billy Bob Thornton's character, Lorne Malvo in Fargo, in that he comes into people's lives, absolutely messes their lives up, bends them to his will, and you know it's going to end badly, and yet the other characters can't see what he's doing, even though we can we don't see it right away in the book, to be fair, because we are still guessing, is he actually helping, or is he, what is his motives? I mean, it's good that we don't immediately get that, but like you say, I see him as a Billy Bob Thornton type of character.
Yeah, that would be superb. I totally agree, and the reference you made there, that would be incredible to see. I'm getting excited thinking about it. This has to happen. This just has to happen now.
My other choice for him would be someone, again, who's probably one of our best actors around. Toby Jones, I think, would be perfect for him as well, because he's got that look where you think, what, that guy? And then, but he's got the acting chops to back it up. Yeah,
it would be someone that would sort of go under the radar. So Toby Jones would be kind of ideal for that, wouldn't he? He's got that kind of look.
Yeah.
And also you would probably underestimate him as well. If you walked into a pub and approached you, as he does at the beginning of that, then you wouldn't necessarily look twice. So yeah, good shout. Really good shout. And a superb actor.
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much everyone we mentioned there, except fucking Danny Dyer, is an amazing actor. So,
hey, leave Natasha's choice out of this. That's just who she was seeing, man. That's who she pictured. Ex-footballer. She went just immediately to Danny Dyer for some reason, even though he's not an ex-footballer.
We'll call him a maybe.
That's what I say. Christ. So, I think that about wraps up our discussion here for The Friend. So, Charlie, what's next for D.I. Norris, and when can we expect to see him again?
Well, he's back on the 11th of November. The second book in the series is out then. It's already up for pre-order, as an ebook at least, where it's 99 pence, if I may get a quick plug in. And it's going to be called... thank you. And it's going to be called Lethal Game. And I'm massively excited about this one. This one's got a far quicker pace throughout. The Friend was pretty quick, but this one is a proper sprint from start to finish. So I'm really excited for people to see it. So that's out from the 11th of November with HarperCollins. Where could people find the books, did you say? Sorry. Yes, so obviously that's up on Amazon, or you can pre-order from any of the Waterstones or any of the book sites, wherever you may be listening. I'm on writercharliegallagher.com is my website, and if you go there's links to the books as well. But anywhere you get your books from, really, you'll be able to see it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that one coming out. And I've written 80,000 words of the third book, so I'm just writing the end. So book 3 will follow on. They like to put a 6-month spacing between there or thereabouts. So I'd imagine that March 2022.
Yeah, so no pressure then.
No pressure. Well, luckily I'm kind of ahead, because if that one comes out in November, I'm just about writing the end of the third one. So that will be March. So then I'll be starting on to the next one quite quickly, I'd imagine. And you try and keep ahead. So
how many books are you planning for the D.I. Norris series then? Do you have like a set amount, or...?
No, not at all. With George Elms and Maddie, that both 2 complete series now, they were 6 and 7 respectively. And it just kind of got to the point where you kind of come full circle, where your main characters, there's been an arc, a journey, if you like, without me sounding too much like a pretentious dick. And you think, actually, that's kind of the place where I think it needs to end. And I think I'm relatively good at that. I've seen other series, TV and book, where maybe they've gone on a book too long. And I've still got... I still see a lot of people asking for more books in those 2 series, so I don't think I've done that yet. In relation to Joel, I think, again, he'll just go on until I get to the point where I think that's about right.
He's been through enough.
Yeah, I do put him through the mill, and I think that's another consideration as well, because you get to the point where they're so bitter, twisted, and beaten up, that they're not sort of behaving like people that you can like, and you need to like these main characters. So I don't know is the honest answer. Probably around about 6 or 7. That seems to be my number.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like a direct, like, how many books are there going to be in the series? I need to know now. It was kind of like, I wondered if you had a set number in your head, or like you said, it's as many as it needs to be to complete the character's arc, which is exactly what you said. So
yeah,
cool.
It's more what excite. I'm really excited with writing Norris at the moment, and I've got loads of ideas. And when that sort of wanes a little bit, I've also got a really an idea that really excites me about a standalone thriller. So I'll probably do that in amongst it. But yeah, it's when I get to the point where I'm not looking forward to doing the next one, I'll stop. And that's not to say I won't go back. There may be another Maddie Ives book at some point, but who knows?
I was about to say, have you ever thought about doing crossovers, creating the Gallagher universe, as it were?
Gallagher universe, I like that.
Crossing over Maddie Ives, D.I. Norris, and what was your other character? And Elms.
George Elms, yeah. George and Maddie I could, because they were the same publisher. The way that it works behind the scenes is that Joel Norris, is now owned half by HarperCollins, and I wouldn't be able to mix that with another publisher. But so, I mean, that's a boring technical element. But I mean, the first two series I could link, but you work very hard on making them sound different. So whether I would or not, I wouldn't rule it out, but no plans.
I suppose it's when, Netflix option the George Elm series, and they're like, right, by the way, you're like, oh, by the way, I've got a spin-off series here that you can do, and then they're like, great, let's cross them over.
Be a lovely conversation. I can't wait to have it.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's about all the time we got here on the pod this week. I'd like to say thank you again to our guest, Charlie Gallagher. It's been a pleasure having you here and getting an insight into the process and the characters and all that. It's been really interesting, I think, for us as well as our listeners, hopefully. And that's great. Any last words?
Just to say thanks for inviting us along. I do appreciate that the people listening to this are into their movies and their TV shows. So I hope we haven't hijacked that too much. And thanks very much.
Do you know what? We'll probably get more listeners than our regular pod, if we're honest. But that's great. So, David, any last words?
No, this has been one of my favourite pods so far. Having a chat to Charlie, finding out all about his process. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
If you've been impressed with our journalistic integrity and research this episode, then drop us a message, and we're more than happy to have you come on. And we're always on the lookout for great guests like we've had today. So that's all we've got time for today. See you next time.